Imagine waking up. It's not a sudden jolt, but this slow, groggy return to consciousness.
Like coming out of anesthesia or something.
Yeah, exactly. You're lying in a hospital bed, the sheets feel crisp against your skin, you turn your head and see a sunbeam hitting the floor, dust motes dancing in the light.
Very cinematic.
Right. And it triggers this memory from when you were like 6 years old. Lazy Sunday afternoons, safety, warmth. It feels completely visceral. It feels real. You try to sit up, maybe reach for a glass of water, but then you notice something is just off.
But the details are too perfect.
Yes.
The light is too consistent. There's no background noise, no hum of an AC unit.
Exactly. And then you try to access a computer interface, but not with your hands, with your mind, and you realize the terrifying truth. You aren't in a hospital.
You aren't even in a body.
You are like copy with a capital C, a digital scan of a human brain running on a server farm. Your physical body is just gone. You are essentially software ghosting through a machine.
Which is, I mean, that is the opening hook of the book we're covering today. And honestly, it's one of the most effective, existentially terrifying openings to a science fiction novel I've ever encountered.
It really is.
It sets the stakes immediately.
Yeah.
You are alive, but you are not you anymore.
So today we are doing a deep dive into Greg Egan's Permutation City. And listen, if you think this is just another generic, upload your brain to the cloud and live forever happily ever after story.
Oh, you are in for a massive shock.
A huge shock. This book, which was written back in the 90s, by the way, treats digital immortality not as this fun fantasy, but as a gritty, economic, and deeply philosophical nightmare.
It's strictly hard sci-fi. Egan isn't waving a magic wand here. He's looking at the timeline roughly between 2045 and 2050, and he's asking very specific logistical questions.
Practical question.
Right. If we could actually scan a brain, what happens when the server needs maintenance? What happens when you can't pay the electric bill?
Sorry, your existence has been suspended due to insufficient funds.
Which is literally a plot point. It's wild.
Yeah.
We have 3 complex threads to untangle today to really get what Egan is trying to say. We have a man running cruel experiments on his own digital clone to test the laws of physics.
That's the guinea pig.
Yep. Then we have a struggling programmer trying to invent artificial life in a simulated universe. And finally, we have a crisis where weather prediction software threatens to just wipe out the entire digital population.
Because they need the RAM.
Exactly.
And all of these threads lead to this concept called the dust theory, which is the big takeaway today. It's a theory that challenges the very idea of whether we need a physical universe to exist at all.
It's a heavy one. It definitely breaks your brain a little bit.
Right.
But to get there, we really have to start with the guinea pig.
Paul Durham.
Paul Durham. But not the man, the copy.
Right.
The book drops us right into his perspective immediately after he's been scanned. He's in a simulation of his apartment in Sydney.
And he is not taking it well at all.
No. The source material explains that the bailout rate for new copies, so people who scan themselves just to see what it's like, is nearly 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, the psychological weight of knowing I am code, it's usually too much. They panic.
So naturally, this copy of Durham tries to pull the ripcord. He accesses the interface to delete himself. The text describes this little icon. It's a stick figure with a parachute.
Darkly funny.
It really is. So he clicks it. He just wants it to be over.
And nothing happens.
Which is a special kind of hell. Imagine that panic. He digs into the file directory and he finds a README file. A note from his original self, the biological Paul Durham, who is still walking around in the real world.
The original Durham.
Right. And the note essentially says, I disabled the suicide switch. I need you to stick around because I have to run some tests.
You are the control group. That is the dynamic.
Just imagine the absolute rage. He screams at the empty air Durham. You bastard! He realizes he was created solely to be a lab rat for himself.
But the tests aren't medical. They're computational. And this is where Egan really starts to peel back the layers of what it means to be digital. The biological Durham wants to test the nature of subjective time.
Okay, let's unpack this carefully, because this is the first major insight of the book, and it basically sets up everything else.
So the biological Durham asks the copy to perform a really simple task. Just sit in a chair and count. 1, 2, 3.
Simple enough.
For a human, sure. But for a copy, time is just the processing of data states. So while the copy is counting, the biological Durham starts messing with the server. He runs the simulation slices out of order.
Wait, out of order?
Completely scrambled. Think of it like a movie reel. He takes the frame for second number 9 and processes it first. Then he calculates second number 2, then second number 5.
Oh,
And he
wow.
pauses the simulation for an hour, real time between seconds. He basically puts the copy's brain through a blender of chronology.
So from the outside, looking at the server logs, the copy's existence is just total chaos. It's nonlinear. There is no flow whatsoever.
Right. But then they turn the communication channel back on and ask the copy, how did that feel?
What does he say?
The copy says, what do you mean? I just counted to 10. It was perfectly smooth.
Wait, so he didn't feel the pauses? He didn't feel the jump from second 9 back to second 2?
Not a single thing.
Oh,
And
that...
this is the critical aha moment for the deep dive. Consciousness is a relationship between states.
Okay.
If state A contains the memory of the past and leads logically to state B, it simply doesn't matter if state B is calculated 100 years later or on a totally different computer or completely out of order.
As long as the internal logic holds up, the external time is totally irrelevant.
Precisely. Subjective experience creates its own continuity. You could be paused for a millennium, and to you, it wouldn't even be a blink. The software doesn't know it's being paused.
That's liberating in a way, but also terrifying. It means you're completely detached from the physical rhythm of the universe. You are just this isolated island of logic.
And that detachment is what fuels the later parts of the book. But before we get to the dust theory, we have to look at the flip side of this digital world. We need to talk about the autoverse.
Yes, this is Maria DeLuca's story.
Right. While Durham is busy torturing his clone, we jump to Sydney, roughly 2050. Maria's a programmer. She's completely broke, and she's obsessed with a very different kind of simulation called the autoverse.
So how is the autoverse different from what the copies live in? Because aren't they both essentially just simulations?
They are, but the underlying philosophy is totally different. So the copies, like Durham, are living in a simulation that tries to mimic the real world top-down.
Top-down meaning?
Meaning it's messy. It's full of patches and good enough physics to just trick the human brain into thinking it's looking at a real table or a real sunset.
Oh, got it. Like a video game engine. It looks real on the surface, but there's nothing actually inside the table. It's hollow.
Exactly. The autoverse is different. It's a cellular automata universe.
For any listener who hasn't spent time in a comp sci class, think of Conway's Game of Life. It's a grid where very simple rules dictate if a pixel lives or dies based on its neighbor.
Yes, perfect analogy. But the autoverse is a 3D, incredibly complex version of that. It has its own chemistry, its own physics, but they are simplified.
Simplified how?
There's no quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
no uncertainty principle, just rigid, deterministic rules. Atom A plus atom B always equals molecule C, every single time.
And Maria is trying to do something basically impossible inside this toy universe. She's trying to make artificial life evolve.
Specifically, a bacteria called A. lamberti. She's trying to get it to digest a complex sugar called mutose.
Which shouldn't be that hard, right?
You'd think, but the problem is because the physics are so simple, life usually just hits a dead end. It can't get complex enough to survive changes in its environment.
There's this great scene where she's up all night, tweaking the simulation, burning through her meager savings just to pay for the cloud computing time. It's this classic hacker in the dark moment. She is completely obsessed.
And she pulls it off.
She does.
She finds a strain where a specific enzyme mutates just enough to process the sugar. She proves that Darwinian evolution, real, messy, adaptive evolution, can actually happen inside this simplified artificial logic.
It's a massive triumph. She's technically a creator of life. But the book immediately contrasts this digital victory with her physical reality, because while she's playing God in the machine, her real life is completely falling apart.
It really is. Her mother, Francesca, is dying.
And this brings up a massive cultural conflict in the book that I found so fascinating. Francesca outright refuses to be scanned. She won't become a computer.
She belongs to a group called the Church of the Guy Who Is Indifferent.
That name has stuck with me since I first read the notes. The God Who Is Indifferent. It sounds so bleak.
It is bleak, but it's also oddly rational within the context of the world. The theology is that God exists, but that he is simply the prime mover. He set up the physics, the rules, and then just walked away.
He doesn't intervene.
Right. He doesn't care about you personally. He is just the math of the universe. And Francesca believes that a copy isn't a soul. It's just a talking monument.
That is a brutal phrase, a talking monument.
It implies that the copy is just a highly advanced recording that can interact. It's not her. It's a fake. So Maria is stuck. She desperately wants to save her mother, but she can't afford it. And even if she could, her mother thinks the whole process is an abomination.
It really grounds the sci-fi in this painful human reality. Maria is isolated. Her boyfriend, Aiden, is leaving her for a job in Seoul. She's losing all her connections to the physical world, so she just retreats further into the autoverse, where she actually has some control.
Which parallels our third storyline perfectly. We've had the guinea pig and the creator. Now we meet the consumer, a copy named Pier.
Pier is basically what Maria can't afford to be wealthy.
Extremely wealthy. Pier is a solipsist. He lives in a completely private virtual reality. He spends his entire existence climbing an infinite skyscraper. Just climbing. Forever.
Why? That sounds exhausting and boring.
Because he can. He tweaks his own brain code to ensure he always feels motivated. He adjusts his ennui settings so he never gets bored. He literally programs himself to enjoy the climb.
That sounds like a drug addiction without the substance, just manipulating your own neurotransmitter levels directly.
It is exactly that. But it highlights the core economy of this world. To exist as a copy, you need quacks.
Quacks.
QAX. Quadrillions of instructions per second. It's the currency of the afterlife. You don't pay for rent. You pay for processing power. If you run out of quacks, you slow down.
And this is where the plot kicks into high gear. The price of quacks suddenly skyrockets, the market crashes.
Enter Operation Butterfly.
This is such a cool concept. Tell us what Operation Butterfly actually is.
So the nations of Southeast Asia, ASEAN, they decide they've had enough of typhoons destroying their economies year after year. They launch a massive project to simulate the global weather system in ultra-high resolution.
To predict the storms.
Right. If they can predict a typhoon's formation early enough, they can send drones to seed the clouds and divert it entirely.
But to simulate the entire Earth's weather in real time, that takes a lot of juice.
An astronomical amount. You need every scrap of computing power on the planet. So ASEAN just buys up the entire global computing market.
And for a copy like Pier, this is an absolute disaster.
It's terrifying. He's climbing his tower and suddenly blackout. He loses 10 hours of subjective time in a split second because the server he was renting got prioritized for weather prediction.
It's a stark reminder. They call themselves immortals, but they are just software renting hardware. If the physical world decides that predicting a storm is more important than Pier climbing his virtual tower, Pier just gets turned off.
It creates this profound existential crisis. You are only real as long as you can pay the electric bill. And you are always at the mercy of the physical world. A power outage, a war, a weather simulation, literally anything physical could wipe you out.
And this vulnerability, this is exactly what Paul Durham, the original Paul Durham, has been waiting for. This is where he springs his trap.
Segment 4, the city. Durham has a plan to escape the physical world entirely.
He approaches Maria DeLuca first. He's seen her work with the autoverse bacteria, and he offers her a job.
A job with a blank check. He wants her to design a seed biosphere. He wants her to build a whole planet inside the autoverse. Not just bacteria, but a complex system that could evolve plants, animals, maybe even human-level intelligence.
But here's the catch. He admits to her that the computer hardware required to run a planet-sized autoverse, it doesn't actually exist.
Right. It would take a computer bigger than the Earth itself to run it for even a few seconds. Maria's so totally confused. She asks him, "Is this a thought experiment? Why are you paying me millions to design software that can literally never run?"
But Durham is playing a 4D chess game here. He also goes to the wealthy copies, people like Pier and a billionaire named Thomas Riemann, and he asks them for a huge buy-in, 2 million ECUs.
He promises them a sanctuary. He claims he can launch a version of them into a new reality that is completely invulnerable. No market crashes, no Operation Butterfly, no insufficient funds ever again.
And obviously the copies are skeptical. They ask the million-dollar question, where is this computer? Is it underground? Is it on the moon? Because if it's physical, it can be destroyed.
And Durham says it's nowhere. And it's everywhere. Which brings us all the way back to the experiment from the beginning, the counting experiment.
The dust theory.
This is the brain melter. Durham argues that consciousness is just a pattern, a sequence. State A leads to state B. Remember how the copy didn't notice when the simulation was scrambled or paused?
Right, it felt totally smooth to him.
Durham takes that to its absolute logical extreme. He says the universe is infinite. Somewhere, in the random noise of the cosmos, in the dust of a nebula or the static of a dying star, there are patterns of atoms that coincidentally look exactly like the data of our brains.
Wait, he's saying that if the universe is big enough, my brain state exists purely by chance somewhere else.
Yes. And if you have enough dust and enough time, eventually you'll find a configuration of dust that looks like state B of your brain. Durham believes that because consciousness is just the link between A and B, your mind will automatically bridge that gap across space and time.
So he doesn't need a computer to run the simulation forever.
No, he just needs to set up the start.
Hmm.
He needs to create the seed. If he configures the autoverse perfectly, which is why he needed Maria's evolutionary code so it's logically robust and consistent, and launches it, he can just turn the computer off.
He can turn it off, and they just keep living.
He believes the simulation will continue to exist in the abstract mathematical possibilities of the universe. The dust will pick up the computation. The pattern is self-sustaining simply because it is internally consistent.
That is a leap of faith that makes religious zealotry look completely rational. He's banking his actual soul on a mathematical hypothesis.
And that's exactly what he sells to Peer. He tells Peer, stay here and you'll eventually be deleted by a server crash. Come with me and we become pure math. We become independent of physics entirely.
And Pierre, faced with the Operation Butterfly blackouts, makes the choice. He decides to copy himself again.
He leaves his current version behind to deal with the CAX market and sends a new version of himself into Durham's Permutation City. He chooses the chance of true independence over the certainty of being a renter.
It really forces you to question what constitutes a person. Throughout the book, there's this haunting quality to the copies. Maria's mother calls them monuments. Pierre treats himself like a customizable avatar.
There's a scene where Pierre literally reaches into his own chest and pulls out his heart just to show he can. It's grotesque, but it's his way of saying, I am not biology anymore. I am geometry.
Yet, despite all of that posturing, he's terrified of death.
That's the grand irony of it all. They shed their bodies to become immortal, but they realize they are more fragile than ever. They are constantly scared of the off switch.
The dust theory is their attempt to remove the switch entirely, to become so abstract that nothing can ever kill them.
But it leaves the listener and the reader with a massive lingering doubt. Even if Durham is right, even if the dust picks up the pattern, is it really them? Or is it just a scattered coincidence that thinks it's them?
Well, that leads perfectly to the ultimate provocative thought for this deep dive. Because if Paul Durham is right, if consciousness creates its own continuity out of random noise.
Then how do we know we are here right now?
Exactly. Are you physically sitting there listening to this deep dive? Or are you just a pattern of dust scattered across 4 different galaxies that just thinks it's listening to a conversation because the math happens to add up?
If the dust theory holds, there is literally no difference.
On that absolute existential crisis of a thought, we're going to wrap up. Whether you are a biological human, a digital copy, or a coincidental arrangement of space dust, thanks for listening.
See you in the next permutation.